Viewers, you can't see me today. I don't know why, but Sridharji is visible, and let's go with that. Namaskar. Today is June 25th, Friday, and welcome to Daily Global Insights with Sree and Sree, episode 190. We start with a bang on the spy who defected, or did he? Sridharji, Beijing releases the photo of Dong Jingwei, the official at the center of the defection rumors. He was seen on June 23rd attending the meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meet. In the announcement that carried a photo, Mr. Dong was seen sitting in the right corner. Sir, with your permission, I'm going to put the picture now, and we can talk to that. So go ahead, sir. I have the picture up now.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday as we get to the weekend. It's all good news, as things have transpired yesterday, everywhere around the markets and so on. But the most important news is coming from China, which is there was tremendous speculation around this, a big name that's supposed to have defected. As it turns out, the name has popped out. His name is, as Sree pointed out, Dong Jingwei. He is seen. The Chinese, for the first time, usually they don't do this show and tell. They showed them. They basically put the photograph up of the meeting that happened on June 23rd, the SCO meet. It's virtual meet of which some of the people attended live, especially from Beijing. And sitting at the right-hand corner was the man at the center of the controversy and his daughter, who is supposed to have migrated or who is supposed to have defected to United States right from China via Hong Kong. Never happened, or it doesn't seem to have happened based on the photograph. Begs the question, how some of these intelligence reports come out.
Yes, indeed. And let's move on. Sustaining war against China would be a significant challenge, Joint Chiefs Chairman says. This, I'm assuming, is a Joint Chiefs Chairman of the United States, sir?
Yes, indeed. The Joint Chiefs Chairman addressing the budget meeting day before yesterday, or yesterday, if I recall, yesterday, Mark Miley made his presentation and said that, budgets are essential. The biggest threat, we got two threats. One is Russia, which is less, but most significant one is China, especially defending Taiwan, which is looming as a big threat along with South China Sea. But the first signs of trouble that would brew would be in Taiwan. So he has effectively stated that, sustaining a long war without significant investment would be a difficult proposition. For those who don't know or who need to be a little bit enlightened, the annual budget for defense is $753 billion. That covers a range of operations. It doesn't exclude any new theater operations or new operations. These are all defend, protect, maintain, and manage. So in his briefing, he was alluding to the specific threat that China poses. But there's also, in the same meeting, there has been a cut to the Navy budget, and that was not very well received both by the Republicans or the GOP and the media, especially in the context of what needs to happen in the South China Sea and Taiwan Straits.
And the Chinese Defense Ministry says Taiwan independence implies war. Taiwan must realize that its future lies in reunification with China and cannot rely on the United States. Sir, the saber rattling has gone up one notch now.
The saber rattling has gone up. Also, I think China is laying down the framework, which is to say you are a small island and you can't defend yourself, we'll railroad you. And you are part of the greater China. That has been our vision. You only broke away, so therefore it's right for you to rejoin. But all this stuff that you're doing is reliant on, you can see very clearly, there's no mention of Quad. There's no mention of Japan. There's no mention of any other nation around. He says United States. You are reliant on United States, and United States is not the most trusted ally. This is another shot that the China is firing at the United States. Obviously, they have intelligence of what's happening on the budget side. They are all watching what happens here. But it's a very, very clear statement on Taiwan by China.
And Australian senators support rallies in 5 cities nationwide against Beijing Winter Olympics. So now this movement has started taking root. People are saying don't go and participate in Beijing Winter Olympics. First of all, the 2020 Olympics itself has not been held yet. So this is again, I guess 2021 is when the Winter Olympics were planned, and that also now is gathering momentum against. So your thoughts? Do you think the world needs these two games this time around?
Well, clearly, Japan is too risky. In fact, I think that is not really needed at this in this specific hour, especially when Japan is combating COVID and also the COVID variant, which is emerging in Asia. As far as the Winter Olympics in Beijing is concerned, the boycott of the Winter Olympics in Beijing, it's quite amazing to see Australian states or the five major cities across the country where the rallies are going to be held against participation for a number of reasons. One is they have been pounding away at Australia with economic threats. Obviously, COVID has been one of the big kind of detractions and the anti against the China. Nowhere one has seen as much of it as you see it in Australia, even in the United States, which has suffered such drastic, economically as well as, the impact of it on human life and the ecosystem. But you see the Australians rising and saying, no more dealing with China.
And global food prices rise 40%, 12th month in a row, and China's surging demand is one of the big factors. So this is China's internal consumption numbers, or is it for everybody?
China exports more than almost close to 60% of its food requirements from outside. So this obviously, as the economic affluence in China grows, then you find that the demand for food products also grows. And so therefore, China is prowling all around the world to import items to meet the internal demands. So naturally, when the demand exceeds the supply, you have the price theory. So that's one part of it. I think the second part of it, that is the prime reason in the past 12 months, also markets are constricted in terms of movement. There's restrictions on import exports. There's restriction on supply as a result of the COVID situation. Which is all contributing towards the rise in food prices. Clearly, one can see around, somebody asked a question, how do you deal with inflation? We are in a very interesting phase of world where interest rates are low, inflation is rising, and there's more liquidity being put into the system, which only implies the prices are going up. We'll deal with this subject separately when we have a fireside chat as to what this is doing to the ecosystem. Excess cash, excess liquidity, rising prices, but low interest rates.
And in a follow-up to what happened in Ukraine seas, Russia says on the next occasion it may fire to hit intruding ships if they fail to heed warnings. And the United Kingdom in return says that it would send warships through Crimea again. So now the saber rattling has started from Russia too, sir.
The saber rattling has started. I think that my own observation in this is not warranted by either Britain or of course you have to support Ukraine. You didn't do so when the Crimean War happened and the annexation of Crimea took place. The EU, kept quiet, imposed some sanctions. Again, let it go. You remember the Ukrainian jet being shot down, and it was said that it is the Russian forces, but it turns out it's not the case. Whosoever it was, nothing was done there again. So you have a real challenge in as far as Russia is concerned. And the question is, and then you have the Gazprom, which is going on, Nord Stream 2 pipeline that goes into Europe, where you are reliant on Russia for the energy. And you saw the dialogue around that between US as well as EU on that topic. When you say that what do you want to do? You want to kind of send your ships across and then provoke an unprovoked, provoke a guy who is just doing his stuff, what he needs to do. Having said that, there's a beautiful picture which is shot by a Russian drone or from a Russian plane of the British carrier, attack carrier, just on the waters adjacent to the Crimean region. So I think that this is not warranted at this stage. But then, what can you do?
Viewers, we are having a bit of technical difficulties today on Facebook, and I just saw a small drop in YouTube and it has come back again. I have no explanation for this. These things happen. This is technology. So we'll continue on. Israel-Hamas truce remains very fragile, wants United Nations envoy in an address to Security Council. Iran's centrifuge facilities have been substantially damaged in the attack, according to sources, despite Iranian denial. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, my thoughts are that the damage has been inflicted. There's pictures that are coming out which show that there is a damage. And now the intelligence sources confirm that it was the centrifuge that was hit, and to some extent it puts their program, back by a good distance, which has prompted. We covered this yesterday. Not only Israeli pressure, but persuasion, but also the Biden probably coming into gathering the same intelligence that the world is aware of, to say, okay, let's delay the discussions with Iran for some more time. I have to say that if this was an Israeli strategy, they're saying, okay, you don't want to talk to us, no problem. We'll know how to inflict damage. We'll inflict damage and we'll bring you to the negotiating table. That's exactly what they seem to have done, but though we have no evidence or proof to substantiate that.
And let's take a look at United States news. Biden announces the bipartisan deal. Big story is, to answer the direct question, we have a deal, Biden said from the White House lawn. We have made serious compromises on both ends. No one got everything they wanted in the package, said Senator Kristen Sinema, Democrat from Arizona. So now I'm going to put up a chart that gives you the details of where things break down. Sridharji, with your permission, I'm going to go to the charts right now. And we start with the allocation on roads and bridges, sir.
Yes, it's a $925 billion. They've added another close to $400 billion to the budget line. So roads, bridges, and major projects gets $109 billion, almost 10%. Clearly, this requires a major overhaul in the United States. If you are all traveling around the roads and bridges, you will probably begin to understand why. Safety, they have put in $11 billion, which is around the public safety measures that need to be put in place. Then the public transit, which is your MTA or BART, if you're in California, or the tubes, they have allocated $49 billion. Passenger and freight rail, they have allocated $66 billion, which is to enhance that railroad system. Electrical vehicle EV infrastructure, this is one of the much talked about points. They have allocated $7.5 billion. We discussed this, whether you really need this or whether you expect Teslas of the world to roll this out, whether you need government to spend this kind of money. Electrical buses and electrical transit system, $7.5 billion. This is something that the modification of the buses, the transport which is provided by the government is going on. So I think that's a good measure. Reconnecting communities. I don't know what this is, but the story is that's $1 billion. All I can think of is they have allocated some money for all these surges that's happening across the border. You need a budget to fund it. So they're pinching money from COVID, here, there, infrastructure. So that's the $1 billion. Airports, if you recall, $25 billion has been in the plan all the time. They did $25 billion when we did the $925 billion in the December budget, or the December, not the budget, December, the R&R, Rescue and Relief Program stimulus that was launched. Then ports and waterways is $16 billion. That's, again, acceptable. Infrastructure financing is $20 billion. That's, in my view, a pocket holder for all the constituents to get some piece of money for the infrastructure, because you have already covered a lot of items under the infrastructure. Water infrastructure, 55 billion. I have a feeling there is an element of clean water because the details of the project is not spelled out. So you have a 55, that's a significant allocation. Broadband infrastructure, 65 billion. I mean, this is much talked about. This is to every home to be connected, and the reasons attributed is the COVID demonstrated that people are not connected with the right bandwidth and were handicapped as a result of everything moving online. So I think there is a definitely strong felt need. Environmental remediation, $21 billion. Again, this is the the energy program, or the clean air program, or Go Green program. That's $21 billion is a significant money. This is not, they're talking about multi-billion dollars, so something more is coming. Power infrastructure, including grid authority. This is, in United States, power infrastructure is rather poor. Many of them have not been, upgraded. The question is, we have to see the details of this 73 billion, but it's a huge number. Then Western water shortages. This is your Californian areas, where there has been acute drought. They have allocated $5 billion. Resilience, $47 billion. To me, that again is a placeholder for allocation. So you can see that there are some good numbers, and which is justified, and there are placeholders. But this is not the end of it, because Nancy Pelosi says that this is not a deal unless you have all the liberal priorities included.
That is true indeed. And viewers, there was a bit of a challenge for us to try and get you all the numbers. We have tried the best possible way. I hope you could read the text that appeared as he was going from one section to the other, such as water infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, and so on. We tried to keep up with Sridharji. I hope you understood or you got it, because viewing it on a smartphone might not be the easiest thing. You have a challenge. If you think you have a challenge, we have a bigger challenge. Thank you very much for your patience. Let's move on to the next topic. FBI Director Christopher Wray urges companies not to pay ransomware, and Department of Energy seeks $201 million from the government to step up security. A bipartisan Senate bill seeks to establish U.S.-Israel Artificial Intelligence Research Center to combat new and emerging threats. Certainly, this is a clear and present danger. So, your thoughts? Do you think now FBI is in a position to recover payments via bitcoins for ransomware?
Based on the current methodologies that is used, they seem to have got a good handle on taking care. But this is yesterday's problem. Often security is going to be tomorrow and day after. Whether they are sufficiently prepared, time will tell. Right now, they are not, which is why they are asking for money. Second, many of the institutions that were, or industries that were what you call attacked, such as the food industry, which is the meat industry, the gas pipelines, the power grids. So the infrastructure elements that were attacked, they are still vulnerable. There are no mechanisms that are put in place to deal with these issues. So therefore, I think that the institutions are getting their act together as a result of some of the intrusions that have happened. The AI, the issue, that's a very good initiative that has been put in place. One important point that FBI made is, if the infrastructure is within the jurisdiction of enforcement, such as in United States, it makes the detection and enforcement much easier. But if it is located in a province or a location where United States has no jurisdiction, or must get the jurisdiction rights, or must get the enforcement rights, it could make it even more complicated.
There are questions that surround U.S. plans to evacuate Afghan allies amid pullout. These are Afghan nationals who assisted U.S. wartime efforts. Massachusetts Democratic Senator Seth Moulton, a Marine veteran, has raised this question. So, your thoughts? So, we have done this thing periodically. The United States will help people who help them. For example, from Iraq, we've had many people come over during the 2003 when the ouster of Saddam Hussein happened. So, the same thing is now playing out in Afghanistan. You think?
Uh, Seth Moulton has made a very good point. He basically says who is in charge. There's no person in charge, so there's going to be confusion. That's his point. There's two Democratic and two Republican senators have raised the issue, and their issue is, Mr. Biden, you never thought about this. You announced the plans. Now you are thinking as to how to operationalize it. What are you going to do to all these people who helped, and potentially they could be slaughtered, if they are left behind as a result of helping United States against Taliban through the course, notwithstanding the fact US and Taliban have struck a deal. You know what happens when people are left behind.
And Biden's Department of Justice backs Trump era approval of Line 3 pipeline opposed by environmental groups. This is the environmental assessment of the Minnesota pipeline project. And a US oil billionaire warns the United States cannot cut shale plants. China and India continue to build coal plants. That is true because I think most of the electricity is generated out of coal-fired plants in these two countries. So, your thoughts? Where do you think this is going to end up?
Well, we discussed this Minnesota project pipeline that goes to Detroit by an energy company. This is right now in the middle course, and the Army Corps engineers are constructing this. And this came up, went to for a legal challenge, and Department of Justice has effectively stated, look, the assessment has been done by the government environmental groups, and the government has done the assessment of it and proved that there is no environmental impact caused by this specific pipeline. But so it's a red herring in terms of these environmental groups, coming up and protesting against it. So what would be the decision? It'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. We covered this topic in one of the DGI programs when we talked about the various programs that are being cut out.
Texas sues Biden administration over releasing COVID-19 infected illegal immigrants. We have been warning about this for a long time now. Giuliani has been suspended from practicing law in New York. What's the reason for his suspension, sir? And first off, I think now the law is beginning to play out as we had predicted.
Well, look, I think what's going on in New York is a lot of political rhetoric, because Democrats and Republicans do not just get along. And this is to say that the reason why Giuliani is suspended is he tagged behind President Trump, and he made public pronouncements around the voter fraud and the illegality of 2020 election. So therefore, Mr. Giuliani is suspended from practicing law in New York. Does he care? He doesn't care. He's supporting, he'll go to Washington, D.C., or he'll go to Texas, and he'll probably practice law provided he has a bar license. I'm sure he has. But given his age, he's more an legal advisor, rather than this. So to some extent, there is the political rhetoric behind this. As far as the Texas is concerned, Texas is going always one step ahead, recognizing that there could be new riders coming thrown in by Biden. So effectively saying, look, you guys are infecting and creating a problem. So therefore, we need to figure out a way by which we control the surges in the border.
And let's now take a look at India-related news. Will make India global outsourcing hubs, BPOs having common telecom resources serving customers worldwide, to be offered India as the preferred destination. Electronic automatic private bands exchange, EPABXs, can be located anywhere, including in data centers in India, making this a feasible scheme. So what, if I understand this news item correctly, is that there is more flexibility for foreign operators to be able to have EPABXs perhaps in the place where they are running their operations. Is that correct, sir?
I think that's correct with this cloud storage as well as the cloud services concept, where the data centers can be located anywhere in the world connected through the EPABX infrastructure. So, it is agnostic where it is. So, if that is the case, then India can be a great venue for locating many of the companies' outsourcing facilities. India must make some amendment and adjustment to what they call as the BPO service providers of Indian vintage versus the BPO service providers who are called as the OSPs, the other service providers who are not the Indian BPOs. And I think they are delineating or they are compressing the more or narrowing the gap in terms of the differences so that this specific opportunity can be leveraged by India and further build the BPO business to come out of India.
And Reliance Industries batteries, hydrogen fuel cell plants coming up in India with more than 75,000 crores investment. That is impressive. Where do you think this is being put up, sir? Is it Gujarat or Maharashtra or
Yes,
somewhere else?
Jamnagar.
Jamnagar, Gujarat. Okay.
It is.
And
So you can see Reliance is not to be lagging behind Mr. Adani. And if he is solar, he is coming up in hydrogen fuel cells. Which is going to be the most important component of the EV infrastructure, and Reliance is ready.
Chief Economic Advisor expects food inflation to stabilize with monsoon and unlock. This is the Indian CEA, and he thinks that the food inflation will stabilize. My more bigger concern, sir, is the logistical network up and running completely now in India? Your thoughts on that? Because that is the other challenge. You can produce, but you need to make it reach to the place where it consumes it, right?
That's the reason why you have price inflation, because the supply is not augmented. So there is demand, but the supply is not augmented because of the lock situation and movement of goods. So the unlock situation should help the movement of food, and make the food available. Whether it brings inflation down or the food inflation down remains to be seen. But if you look at the tomato prices and the picture we probably did or did not show this tomato farmers dumping, kilograms of tomatoes because the prices so collapsed so badly that they don't believe it makes any economic viability. Plus supply. I mean, demand has been met. The supply is huge. The price has collapsed. Now we don't have India doesn't have the facilities to preserve, to process and preserve, for future supply. So those are some of the things that need to be addressed. But clearly, monsoon and unlock does help the navigation. But in some instances, the supply is so huge. The question is that what will you do? The prices do come down in those circumstances. I think that's the basis of the CEA's opinion.
And India crosses 300 million doses vaccinated milestone on June 24th with 6 million vaccines administered. So I'm a little confused. Perhaps you can explain what is the line here, sir.
The line here is that India crossed yesterday, on June 24th, the 300 millionth mark. And there have been 8.06 or 8.6 million vaccines was done 2 days ago. They're crossing on an average 5 to 6 million vaccines per day. And the 300 million mark is a big milestone because there's only two countries in the world in fact, even 200 million, there's only two countries in the world. 300 million is narrowing the gap with United States. United States is around 320 million doses. India is around 300 million. So India is not far from going past United States, having been criticized that India didn't have vaccines. Yes, India didn't have the vaccines to do 1.3 billion, but we have already announced that based on the data that is given by the government from July, August, India could step up. So the message here is 300 million is a milestone, and they crossed another 6 million vaccinated on a given day. So they seem to be hitting 5 to 6 million, with a peak that they hit on a couple of days ago of 8.4 million vaccines.
Let's take a quick look at markets. Markets roar on the back of an infrastructure deal, strong economic growth in the first quarter with the Dow rising 322 points, S&P 24.65 and Nasdaq 97.98. The US economy expanded by 6.4% in the first quarter, pointing to a fastest growth in years and working towards an annualized growth of 6%. 3 trillion stimulus that kicked in from December 2020 has been providing the acceleration. The Fed gives US banks a thumbs up as all 23 lenders easily passed the 2021 stress test. These are the stress tests that are run on banks to make sure that the banks are healthy. And the most important thing, Microsoft. Microsoft crosses 2 trillion market cap, and with a 600% growth in stock during the Satya Nadella regime. And I am putting up the chart here, sir. This is most impressive considering that Satya Nadella is a person of Indian origin. I think all of us should feel proud, whether we own Microsoft stock or not. We definitely use their products. At least I do, because I'm a Windows person. I don't know about you, sir. Your final thought before we wind up today's program.
So for me, just to respond to the last point, as a corporate, kudos to Satya Nadella. He took over in February 2014 and achieved a 600% growth in the stock. Today, it's a $2 trillion company. There's only 2 companies in the $2 trillion club. Is obviously Apple is one of them, and then of course, the Microsoft has joined Apple. It's remarkable as to how many of the other tech companies have been left behind, such as Oracle, IBM, and so on. So it's very, very laudable outcome. So one asks the question, okay, what's been, is obviously has done little things right. In corporate, growth, you don't need to do big things big. You need to do little things right and make them big. One of the first things that he did was to integrate all the Microsoft Windows applications into the Apple platform. That was the kicker which went in, whereas there was a war between Apple and Microsoft during Steve Ballmer's regime, right? So then, of course, you can have, a number of other things, including LinkedIn, the cloud platform, etc., that has been added by him. But most important, I think he's also provided leadership to Microsoft. Without people and leadership, you can transform the company. So kudos to Satya Nadella for doing that. He's loved by both the corporate world as well as the markets in terms of the way he articulates and he communicates where he's taking Microsoft. The 2 important news items, one is this is the reason why India needs also stimulus. The deficit budgets no longer matter in this modern pandemic-driven, COVID-19-driven economy. $3 trillion went into the first quarter, and Mr. Biden has promised $6 trillion budget with stimuluses in between. So we're going to have plenty of liquidity, which makes U.S. economy 6% annualized growth. 6.4% is the quarter growth, but annualized over 12 months, based on the future projections, it is 6%. Remember, United States for a long period has not achieved a growth of 2 to 3%. 3 to 4%, it very seldom reaches in certain quarters. Right throughout, not to blame, is just a point that I'm making, is Obama period of 8 years, in United States never crossed greater than 2% growth. So again, US is the market to be, and when US is growing, that simply implies that you have US stocks perform very well in the market. That's reflected in the numbers. The stability of the banking system provides the framework for credit expansion, and the banks are well organized. Why? They are loaded with money that has come from stimulus. JP Morgan, I think we have mentioned this several times. JP Morgan chairman made a statement. He's got $2 trillion in his checking account, not in money market, not in his CDs, but just in checking account, he's got $2 trillion. So if you have liabilities, which is the deposits, then you have the assets, which are loans. If you have a good liability side of the balance sheet, then you have a good hedge to manage your assets, which are the loans. So the money flushed into the system, going into the banking stream, is very rare that we have all banks passing the stress test.
And with that, we bring to an end this week's Daily Global Insights. We apologize for the technical difficulties. I still do not have my video up and running. It is difficult to make any changes while the podcast is live. That is where the constraint is. Sometimes things go right, sometimes they go wrong. And with that, we'll have to conclude our Daily Global Insights episode for today. Thanks for joining. Please subscribe. As always, a great weekend ahead for both. Hopefully you have a great weekend. And Sridharji will be back again, won't we, on Monday. And we'll be back on episode 191. We'll give you better numbers probably on the infrastructure. Hope you enjoyed this broadcast. Please send in your comments. There is going to be a bit of a gap at the beginning where we were struggling to get the video up and running. But beyond that, I think given all the other things that went wrong, I think we managed to do this podcast. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for being patient.
Thank you, and have a wonderful Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. We look forward to seeing you all back again on Monday. Our economy is roaring and markets are roaring, and everybody is smiling and happy, notwithstanding the inflation.